Happy Mugs Up Monday.
Yes.
Cheers.
Mugs up, friends.
Well, hello. How are you guys this
Good.
lovely Monday morning?
Doing well. Love Mondays.
I love Mondays. So Mugs Up Monday is where we get together and we chat about some of the things that we've been thinking about, reading about, listening to.
Learning.
Today, we thought, well, I honestly brought it up because we had a conversation, or I had a conversation with a client, and they are trying to make some really tough decisions, and I said, well, what if you thought about testing some of those ideas with a prototype? So today it shall be done.
Shall we?
We're going to talk about user testing. Okay, so now we get to quiz the non-technical person. How would you define user testing, Larissa?
I would define it as a process that you take to work out the kinks and stuff and figure out what you need to add, what you need to take away, and what you need to refine.
So bad. I think that's a good start.
Okay.
Yeah. Tyler, when do we tend to suggest that user tests are done?
Depends on the stage that the product or idea is in. I like getting feedback from people who will be using this product throughout all stages, but it just kind of depends on which stage in building the product that you're in, which stage the company is in, and really the purpose of the product. Early on, you can get really high-level feedback with more ethnographic questions and observations.
Ethnographic.
It's a big word. That's a $30 word on
so
a
smart.
Monday
Ethnographic.
morning. But then as you go further on down the design process and the build process, you can get more refined feedback. And then finally, kind of one of the last tests you might do is just to make sure you got all the kinks out. Even as you are rolling out the product into your production environment, whether that's your website or your app getting into the store, you might be rolling out those changes to a certain portion of your user base, just so you can address the feedback as it comes in, so you're not releasing the entire product to a whole group of people and then you have to kind of roll back and cover your tracks. Sometimes that happens.
One of the first things that we'll do when we're working with a client is we'll kick off with a strategy alignment session, and then we usually roll into rapid design sprints, or I don't want to confuse because it's not quite the Google Ventures design sprint, which I think we might talk about at another time. So no, we will go into these rapid design sprints, and our goal is to get to testing as soon as physically possible. You can spend a long time building the wrong thing and feel like, man, look at all the progress we've made building something, designing something, and then come to find out no one wants it, or it's not a good user experience to actually get something, the right thing out. Right thing out, that's what I'm trying to say.
And if I could add a caveat to that, it's not just testing. Testing is the activity that you do, but you want to get validation or invalidation of whatever you've built. Ask deeper questions, what slowed them down, what was helpful, what was not helpful, and that can help you validate as you test. Slight distinction.
Yeah, so getting all those details are helpful.
Okay, I have a question. So how do you choose who tests, who the users are that test? Or
That's a good question.
It's a good question. I think every question could be responded to with, it depends. Every question. I would say that if it's a consumer product, it's a little bit easier actually to find people, because you could take a prototype and go down to a coffee shop or a bar or stand on the corner of a street and actually ask people to prototype things live. Because again, you're looking for a wide user-based market, but some of the things you would want to capture is the demographics of the people you're testing with, and so on and so forth. If you have a more targeted audience, like a business app or a very target market application or experience, then you have to actually find those people. There's a couple different ways to do that. One, you can talk to users that you already know. I would say don't test with people that know you. If it's your product, don't test with people that know you, because they like you and they're going to be nice.
They don't want to make you sad.
They don't want to make you sad. Don't test it with your mom. Don't test it with your family. Don't test it with your friends. And try to get outside of your immediate circle and test it there.
The kind of feedback that you're going to get and the way that you want to test is going to vary. So in George's example with consumer product, you can have them go through a certain flow, but somebody who isn't familiar with a health and fitness product, for instance, they might be able to complete that flow, but they might not understand the verbiage you used, for instance, or the value of those things. And so if you're testing, would you feel comfortable paying $20 for this? Then they might not give you the best answer.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, they have no context for what that costs them in the day-to-day anyway, because they don't have a gym membership, that kind of thing.
You mentioned something about who should test, but I think sometimes it's hard to find like how to find those people to test, especially if you don't have existing customers. Some little hacks that we've used in the past, we've actually gone around some of our clients sometimes because they were like, well, we can't find any customers, we don't know if anybody wants it, and so we just went and listed it on Craigslist. I think a couple of tips is that incentivize people with some type of payment, unless they're existing customers, right? I mean, because there's value in it for them to have a better product. But if there's a new product going out into a market that is a new opportunity, then you're going to have to actually incentivize people to participate. You know, anywhere from 10, I mean, we've had clients pay $100 per test. It just depends on the client, or it depends on your risk appetite.
And how long you're going to spend with them. If you're going to
if it's a 30-minute test, 5-minute test, an hour, that's a different thing, totally.
Yeah.
They said they couldn't find anybody and we got 80 responses within 24 hours. That was one way. If you're really targeting a group, you can use Facebook or Google Ads and really actually use the filters to target a very specific group. And then that group can actually give you, again, incentivize them, like, want to make $100? Test our new app. And people actually like testing new apps. I mean, it's kind of fun. I think they're in on something.
There are lots of software platforms, usertesting.com and Validately are the two that I've used the most in the past. And they will help you recruit folks from their own user bases. They have databases of hundreds of thousands of people, which is really cool. But one thing that we found in the past is that you have to take that feedback with a grain of salt. That's true of all. I was going to say,
there's some pros and cons to use.
Yeah.
And I find that a good user test often has a really natural conversation. You don't get that with a user testing platform. Totally a way to just kind of quickly test something and get a really broad audience.
Yeah.
I value, at least when we do user tests with our clients, really getting able to say like, oh, you didn't get that. Well, what were you expecting to happen? And that way you can unpack something that you know you need to fix it, but you don't know how to fix it yet. They will oftentimes tell you how to fix it. What are some things that you must do to set up a user test or how to actually facilitate a good user test? One
thing that I like to have, and the last time I did this, it was in a paper doc where I listed out the script.
Dropbox paper.
In these paper docs, I'll write up a script. The way that I like to do it is literally write out every single word I'm going to say and go over that so that I've thought through the implications and the flow so it doesn't sound choppy when I actually ask the question. This is primarily for live user testing when I'm actually having a conversation. It's not something where I would hand these scripts over to a service and they do this.
I recommend that there's two facilitators. Usually there's one person taking notes and just capturing as much as possible, record the session, and then have one person that's just there to ask questions and to maybe facilitate. When you try to do both at the same time, one, it becomes a little bit unnatural because you're trying to capture everything they're saying and then you're doing this and it's difficult. Another tip is that if you can't have a person in the room with you, which is always better, I will say it's always better, use something like Zoom or Skype. Zoom is amazing, we love Zoom. But use something you can give them controls and then they can share their screen with you and then you can record it. So you can record what they're doing and still facilitate it. We use that a lot because we have clients that have customers all over the world, and so we'll actually do that through Zoom.
The last time I did this, I used a service called Descript, which is it's basically a notation.
What's the word?
Transcribe?
Transcription.
She's so technical.
It's a relatively new transcription service, and it was pretty clean, but it worked really tightly with Zoom, and that was helpful. When you're testing something, how do you know what's worthy testing?
Okay, so there is a debate about this. A lot of people say that fidelity does not matter when user testing. I may be a little controversial in saying that I absolutely disagree. I know, what? I tend to be in the camp that says that most common users have no idea what a wireframe is, nor do they give it grace. I think that it's actually really difficult to effectively test with low fidelity prototypes. There's a whole industry of companies that exist on charging people to run tests on low fidelity prototypes. We used to do it here at Crema. I can never get it to work, and I spent more time trying to explain to them what it would look like one day than I did actually getting meaningful feedback.
So then what do you do with the results of the user testing?
That's a good question.
I'm so glad you asked it.
It depends on the information you've collected. The first thing you do is you'll try to organize the feedback into groups based on the part of the app or the theme of the feedback itself. And then you can try to glean some not specifics usually, but just themes where somebody says, I don't like the color of that button. Well, that's not really helpful. But if you get lots of comments around that button, you can say, well, maybe we need to make that button
Trends.
stick out more.
Yeah.
So you're looking for trends throughout the feedback. Then you go through your design, you can apply those trends, and you can decide the best way to apply the principles that have emerged out of those trends to your designs.
So do we believe in user testing? Absolutely. We do it on every project that we work with. If we don't, we oftentimes don't get great results. And do we think that there's different times to test? Absolutely. Test in the beginning, test in the middle, test at the end, test all the time.
Throughout.
As you iterate, always thinking about how you can test it again. Put it in front of real users.
Final caveat, you don't have to do a big, expensive, long and drawn out test.
Yeah.
You need to plan ahead and you need to be aware of what you want to test, but it doesn't have to be a big, expensive endeavor. Just get feedback. And we'd like feedback from you.
Yes.
Send us feedback on the Mugs on Monday.
Put it in my
Mugs Up
cup.
Monday. Drop a comment. Put it in the cup. All right, cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Happy Mugs Up Monday.
Yay!